Daniel Dubois disposes of Ricardo Snijders in 2 rounds. Boy, what can I say about this fight? If you can call it a fight. I miss fight camp already. That's what comes to my mind when I relive this farce in my mind. I miss fight camp already. Daniel Dubois does what everybody expected him to do against this Snijders character, the blown up cruiserweight who doesn't look particularly good even at cruiserweight. He hit him with some body shots. Snider kept going down on his knee. There was never any devastating knockdowns in this fight. In fact, 1 or 2 of the knockdowns I thought weren't really knockdowns. He was kind of bundled to the floor and there wasn't any clean punch that showed a clear knockdown. But anyway, there was only ever going to be one winner. Daniel Dubois got the guy out of there, hit him with shots and took Snider's heart probably within the first 2 minutes of the fight. And from there on, the writing was on the wall. So we would have much preferred Eric Pfeiffer. I believe that it is Eric, isn't it? I know his surname's Pfeiffer. We would have much preferred Pfeiffer because he was a natural heavyweight, a much bigger guy, unbeaten, and was coming with some ambition. And we know he had a decent amateur background. So that would have been way more interesting than this Snijders guy. I mean, the audacity of Frank Warren to say that at least, when he announced Snijders as the late replacement, at least we've got him a decent test. Like, how can Frank Warren say something like that with a straight face? And that might not be a word for word quote, but it's words to that effect, is what Frank Warren said prior to this fight. How can he say that with a straight face? He knew this wasn't it. And imagine, this guy was waiting in the wings in case there was an issue with the Pfeiffer fight. That's what Frank Warren said. This guy was waiting in the wings, training the whole time in case the Pfeiffer fight got cancelled for whatever reason. I mean, couldn't you have got somebody better than this to be waiting in the wings? Horrible, horrible matchup. And Daniel Dubois did what he did. I saw some training footage of Daniel Dubois the other day, and he looked very slow when he was hitting the pads, and you don't know what else he'd done that day by way of training. Maybe he'd had some really heavy sessions and it had taken it out of him. He didn't have his sharpness later on in the day. But then again, there was a lot of people in the comments talking about how Frank Bruno-esque Daniel Dubois is. And I've said this many times in the past. I never really understood the comparisons that people made between Frank Bruno and AJ. Yes, they're both chiseled and they're black and British, but stylistically, AJ's nothing like Frank Bruno. Like, AJ's got way faster hands, way faster feet, way more athletically gifted, moves much better, got better punch variety, throws much better short punches on the inside. I mean, there's just nothing remotely similar between them. I mean, you could say AJ is kind of upright like Bruno. Yeah. But other than that, stylistically and ability-wise, they're chalk and cheese. Daniel Dubois, on the other hand, is way more Bruno-like than AJ ever was. He has that upright style. He does bend his knees quite well, to be fair, but his back is stiff, right? He's upright. He's quite robotic. He likes to keep things at long range behind the jab, just like Frank Bruno, and he's pretty slow like Bruno. So, yeah, Daniel Dubois, there's a lot more similarity between him and Bruno, although he likes to mix it up close more than Bruno does. That's one thing I will say. He's not particularly pretty up close, Dubois. He kind of bludgeons and clubs away when he's up close to his opponent. There's not really crisp, fast combinations. See, with AJ, when he's on the inside, the combinations are fast and crisp. With Dubois, not so much. It's like clubbing, thudding, bludgeoning shots. And that's kind of similar to Bruno. I mean, Bruno really had no inside game at all. Anybody who, lived through the 80s and 90s and watched Frank Bruno at the time, you'll know that what I'm saying is true. He had no inside game at all. Frank Bruno would often hold and hit. He'd pull his opponent's neck down or pull their head down with his left hand and then uppercut them with the right hand. Bruno was known for doing that. In fact, when he got knocked out or stopped by Lennox Lewis in the 7th round, at the start of that 7th round, he jabs Lewis into a corner and then he does exactly what I just described. He throws a couple shots and then he puts his left hand around the back of Lewis's head and pulls his head down and starts throwing little uppercuts. And they're not very powerful shots, but, you know, that's what Frank Bruno used to do. He really didn't have an inside game at all. On the outside, Frank Bruno, even though he was slow and robotic, he was actually quite effective. He had a very, very strong jab. He had a strong straight right hand over the top. And he was quite a good boxer at long range, Frank Bruno. He didn't look it, you know, he looked so slow and mechanical. But the fighters who were in there with him would attest to the fact that he is, was a difficult guy to fight at long range. I mean, Tim Witherspoon had issues with him. Lennox Lewis had issues with him, and these are guys who could box. Mike Tyson, in the first fight, had a few issues, but Mike Tyson was never trying to box with him, right? Mike Tyson was trying to get on the inside and take him out. But for those who would stand off and box Frank Bruno, they would generally run into problems. So when I compare Dubois to Bruno, I'm also aware of the fact that Bruno had strengths. And Daniel Dubois has plenty of strengths. Even though he might be robotic and slow, that doesn't mean that he's rubbish. That doesn't mean he can't do anything at world level. It just means he has certain limitations. And as I say, they do remind me quite a lot of Frank Bruno in terms of his, lack of speed, stiffness, and his tendency to like to keep things at long range and not being particularly pretty on the inside. I do think, though, we have to see what Dubois' chin is like. Frank Bruno was labeled by the American press as chinny, but he never really was chinny. Like Frank Bruno, it wasn't easy to floor him, to knock him off his feet. He got stunned quite a few times. In the Jumbo Cummins fight, he was stunned. He was obviously stopped by Bone Crusher Smith. That was his first professional loss. Stopped by Mike Tyson, stopped by Tim Witherspoon, stopped by Lennox Lewis. But he was never properly laid out other than in the Bone Crusher Smith fight. And even then he got back to his feet. It was a very heavy knockdown. That was the heaviest knockdown that Frank Bruno ever suffered in his career was in the Bone Crusher Smith fight. In the Tyson fight, he never really suffered any heavy knockdowns. He went down on his knee in the first Tyson fight and in the second Tyson fight. He just went down on his knee. He never suffered a heavy knockdown. He wasn't down against Lewis at all. Against Tim Witherspoon, he ran out of gas and he got bludgeoned in the corner, where he was just knackered and Witherspoon was hitting him with just countless overhand rights and down Frank Bruno went. But yeah, Bruno's chin was never actually that bad. It's just that, well, I don't know. It depends on how you want to define a bad chin, because it wasn't easy to knock Bruno off his feet. But when Bruno was stunned, he struggled to recover and he struggled to hold on. His survival instincts weren't always the best, Frank Bruno. So that's one thing I will say. We have to see what Daniel Dubois' chin is like, whether the comparisons with, Frank Bruno, the similarities end there, or whether he's got a similar chin situation to Frank Bruno. Because, yeah, we do need to see what it's like when Daniel Dubois gets tagged. I think it was the Ebenezer Tete fight. Or, hang on, was it Tete? No, it wasn't Tete. Latte, excuse me. Was it the Richard Latte fight? I forget which one was which. There were two Ghanaian guys he fought. One of them was a hell of a lot better than the other. I think Latte was the better one. Correct me if I'm wrong. He caught Daniel Dubois a couple times in the fight. Now, there was a bit where they were exchanging and Dubois got caught, but there was another bit. It might have been earlier in the fight, I can't remember now, where Latte hits Daniel Dubois with a right hand over the jab, I think it is. And Dubois' leg goes all funny. And most people don't spot it. But if you look closely, particularly if you put the fight in slow motion, Dubois' leg goes funny and then he starts backing off because he was actually stunned by the punch. And his leg basically locks and stiffens. I think it's his right leg stiffens. If you watch it closely and then right after he gets hit with that shot, Dubois backs off. So he was definitely hurt by the shot. How big a puncher is Richard Latte, Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments about this farce against Ricardo Snijders. Hopefully the Joe Joyce fight comes off, but God knows, because again, with all the restrictions, we don't know when crowds are going to be allowed back into arenas. And Frank Warren has been pretty unequivocal about the fact that if they can't fill out the O2 for Dubois Joyce, then they're going to have to push it back. Very disappointing, especially given the fact that Eddie Hearn just put on White versus Povetkin on pay-per-view in his backyard with no crowd. It's a shame that Frank Warren can't do the same with Daniel Dubois and Joe Joyce. I guess he must feel that they won't be able to do the kind of numbers that Dillian Whyte and Povetkin did. And I know I've heard Dillian Whyte and Povetkin didn't do particularly great numbers by Dillian Whyte's standards, but it still made it worth going ahead with, right? Eddie Hearn still went ahead with that show and put it on pay-per-view, no crowd, all that kind of stuff. It's a shame that Frank Warren can't do the same with Dubois and Joyce, because by hook or by crook, crowd or no crowd, I want to see that fight. And I know most of you do as well. So anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.